This week I'm going to be recording with Burn. I did record with Burn rather recently, but not only is it one of the decks that gain the most from Dragons of Tarkir, the metagame has also shifted a lot to the Grixis decks, and I think that the Burn deck's positioning is, again, really good. So I kind of want to give it another run and confirm that with the upcoming Invitational in Columbus and the Grand Prix in Charlotte, both showcasing Modern at tournaments where I expect there to be a lot of Grixis decks, Delver, Twin, Control, and I expect all of those decks are going to have a rough time with Burn. So I've kind of broken the deck down into categories. You've got your 14 attackers, Eidolon, which is the nuts. It's really hard for anyone to play normal Magic with this card in play against Burn. The exception is if they're also an aggressive deck and they get out under it and start attacking and lock you out, but that's not very common. Just the guaranteed damage and just like you can't cast spells against this card. It's really dumb. You've got your 8 1-drop haste creatures that are worth about 5 or 6 damage each when you cast them on turn 1, which is absolutely absurd and leads to a lot of the easy wins. Then Grim Lavamancer, both as a way to beat up on the creature decks like Collected Company, and as a way, it's kind of nice to have this creature because the way it produces damage is very unlike your other creatures, and it can produce like 4-ish, 6-ish damage sometimes against blockers, which is really important. You have 15 bolts. The super stock list only has 14, but I really like having more of that effect. So I have the extra shard volley. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You can't really splash for bump of the night anymore, so these are the bolts that you have. Boros Charm, 4 damage for a single card and 2 mana is just like an easy include. Tarka's Command, the Skullcracks were already in the main deck of this deck, but this is just Skullcrack plus and plus damage specifically. Like Skullcrack was sometimes bad when you drew it and you're like, oh, it only does 3. This card can deal 4 or 5 sometimes with like creatures, so it's pretty important to just have like this hybrid card that can actually do both the, when Skullcrack's good, it does 6 or 7, countering the life gain spell effectively. And when this is, Skullcrack would be bad, it does 3, and this does more, which is, the extra damage is always necessary in this deck. Helix is kind of a whatever burn spell that fills up a slot, same as it was around the Pro Tour. Then Searing Blaze, like Grixis decks actually have a lot of targets for this, and unlike the Abzan decks of the Pro Tour, don't have as many Lilianas. So it's a lot easier to have a land in your hand to just go land, Searing Blaze your creature eventually. The only thing I'm not sure of on the main deck is I kind of want a 3rd Basic Mountain or a 3rd Sacred Foundry, but I don't know if I want to cut a fetch, which cuts a green source or a Tarkus Command, so I have to figure that out. Sideboard's pretty straightforward. The big card missing from the lists that everyone is playing is Deflecting Palm. I don't really expect to play against Infect. I'd rather have the 4th Firewalker in the mirror. And I would rather just kind of use that slot on something else, like the Skullcracks that are really good post-board against a lot of decks. Specifically like the Abzan decks they're really good against. You just want more of this effect so it can't get stripped out of your hand with discard spell. I've also shaved on Molten Rains because one of the big roles of this card was to board in on the play against against the mid-range decks. And with Skullcracks, you have a card you're boarding in anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I also have Path instead of Rending Volley. I think that the upgrade of Path against Firewalkers and like other situations, like just killing creatures that aren't white or blue, is worth the marginal downgrade against Twin. Not really, too into boarding and like Rending Volley just to get them. But besides that, the tech's really straightforward. It's still Burn, so just kind of want to validate my first impression of this deck probably being good right now.